Imagine this, you open your eyes. You are somewhere in pitch black darkness. You want to move, but something is blocking you. A wooden surface. Cold, hard, damp wood. The smell of soil is burning your throat. You want to scream, but no one except you can hear your voice. That is the moment you understand. You are in a grave. You haven't died yet, and there isn't the slightest chance that anyone will ever know this. This was not the nightmare that hundreds of thousands of people lived through in 18th century Europe. This was a tragedy that actually happened. And this reality was so widespread, so well documented, and so horrifying that the doctors, philosophers, and even ordinary citizens of the era struggled for years to pass laws on the matter. Today, I am going to tell you about one of the darkest, least known, and perhaps most brutal truths of medieval Europe: the fear of being buried alive. Bell mechanisms placed inside graves. Claw marks found in exhumed coffins. And how these events changed the course of human history. But first, I need to ask you this. Can you prove that you are dead today? The answer is far more complicated than you might think. Let us now examine this event that altered the course of history. The concept of death in medieval Europe was very different from what we think of today. Modern medicine, EKG machines, brain death criteria, pulse oximeters, all of these were centuries away. Back then, a doctor would place his hand on your neck. If he could not feel a pulse, he would pronounce you dead, or he would hold a mirror in front of your mouth. If it did not fog up, he would pronounce you dead. Sometimes they would place a feather. If it did not move, you were dead. Sounds logical, doesn't it? But it wasn't. Because at that time, catalepsy, catatonic schizophrenia, deep coma, hypoglycemic coma, certain types of poisoning, and dozens of other medical conditions could make a person appear exactly like a corpse. Breathing could drop almost to zero. A pulse could become undetectable by hand. Body temperature could fall dramatically, and these people were buried alive. This was not merely a theoretical fear. Historical records describe this subject in detail. In 1772, when a grave in Breslau, present-day Wrocław, Poland, was reopened, something caught people's attention in the corpse inside. There were deep grooves and claw marks on the interior of the coffin. Deep, desperate, agonized claw marks. The person who had been placed in the grave, presumed dead, must have woken up some time later and had perhaps spent days trying to escape from the narrow, dark confines of the tomb. No one had heard his cries. No one had understood. Similar events occurred in Italy, France, and Germany during that era. Europe's most renowned doctors exchanged letters with one another on the subject. "This cannot be a coincidence," they said. "This is a systematic problem." And they were right. So how did so many cases come to light? To understand this question, we need to take a look at that period. At that time, there was a disease ravaging medieval Europe, the Black Plague. Between 1347 and 1351, the Black Plague wiped out 1/3 of Europe's population. Historical records indicate that somewhere between 25 and 50 million people perished. So what did the survivors do? They tried to get rid of the bodies. The plague was spreading. Leaving corpses unburied was dangerous. And even the church ordered that the dead be interred quickly. In all this haste, who would check, who would wait, who would make sure? The answer, no one. This was not an ordinary epidemic. It also brought with it a culture of mass burial. And that culture persisted even after the plague had passed. Because fear had taken root in people's hearts. But the issue was not solely related to the epidemic. Medicine at the time was still underdeveloped. Medical education generally consisted of years of memorizing Latin texts. Practical anatomy, that is, the study of real human bodies, was forbidden by the Church for decades. From the Council of Tours in 1163 until 1552, cutting the human body was considered a sin during many periods. This meant that the vast majority of doctors in Europe did not truly understand human physiology. They did not know what death looked like or what it felt like. If someone lay motionless, appearing not to breathe, that person was dead. Period. Now let us examine one of the documented death cases from that era. An incident that took place in 1706 in Lyon, France, became a permanent part of both medical history and popular culture. A young woman died of an unknown illness. Her family mourned, a funeral was held, and the woman was buried. Shortly afterward, a night watchman passing near the grave noticed the soil moving slightly. At first he paid it no mind, it's just the wind, he told himself. Then he passed by again. The same movement. This time he stopped and listened, and at that moment he heard it. A muffled sound coming from beneath the grave. He ran to call for help. The grave was dug up. The woman was still alive, but she passed away a few hours later, because in the days since she had been buried, she had been left without oxygen, without water, and her body had reached a point of no return. People talked about this event for days. Then word reached Paris, then all of Europe. And at this precise point, there is a name that must be mentioned, Johann Jacob Wepfer. One of the most important German physicians of the 17th century, Wepfer was among the first medical figures to begin systematically documenting cases of premature burial. Wepfer was the man who recognized the inadequacy of death criteria, committed it to writing, and warned his colleagues. His work inspired the next generation of doctors, and that inspiration laid the groundwork for the waiting mortuaries movement that would explode in the 18th century. But first, I need to tell you about an even darker truth lurking in the background of these events. Church records, particularly from the 14th through the 18th centuries, contain striking notes regarding the reopening of graves. Some of these notes are administrative. Space is being made for a new family member. An old grave is being cleared. But some are far more unsettling. Some records state, the corpse was found face down, not on its back. The hands were gathered beneath the chin. The legs were drawn up to the knees, as if trying to crawl inside. Deep claw marks were found on the lid of the coffin. In an era when pathology and forensic medicine were extremely limited, these findings were interpreted differently. Some senior clergy viewed them as the work of the devil. Among common people, they were interpreted as evidence of the returning dead. In other words, as the origin of the vampire legend. Yes, you heard that right. One of the roots of the vampire myth was the marks left behind in graves by people who had been buried alive. In Balkan folk culture, particularly in Serbian, Romanian, and Bulgarian traditions, a vampire was described as follows. Someone found lying face down in their grave, with a rosy complexion, an uncorrupted body, and filled with blood. Many of these characteristics actually described the physiological state of a person who had been buried alive and died a few days later. Early-stage decomposition gases could cause the face to swell and appear rosy. Especially in cold climates, a body could remain uncorrupted for a long time. Blood could remain liquid for several days after death. How would medieval people make sense of this sight? Diabolical intervention, vampires, the returning dead. And so one fear gave birth to another. The fear of being buried alive spawned the fear of vampires. And the fear of vampires led to more frequent grave openings. And more frequent grave openings led to the discovery of more seemingly alive corpses. And this created a cycle of mass hysteria. In the early 18th century, official vampire investigations were conducted, especially in Serbia and the Habsburg Empire. Austrian officials were dispatched to villages, graves were opened, and reports were written. When you examine those reports today, you can see traces of premature burial between the lines. Yet the people of that era saw something else entirely. Now let's move to the middle of the 18th century. This period is known as Europe's age of enlightenment, reason, science, observation. And with this new mindset, doctors once again turned their attention to the problem of premature burial. But this time they would examine events in a more systematic, more scientific manner. Breuer sought to prove that the death criteria of the era were insufficient and that people were being buried alive. The book sparked great controversy. Some declared Breuer a lunatic. Others agreed with him, but the subject had begun to disturb everyone. In the wake of Bruyère's work, a movement began across Europe, the establishment of institutions called waiting mortuaries, or in German, Leichenhaus. These places, as their name implies, were where corpses were kept for several days before burial. A person who had passed away was not buried immediately. They were kept for several days. Sometimes 5 days, sometimes 7. This was to allow the signs of death to become conclusive. Germany was the pioneer of this practice. In 1791, the first official waiting mortuary was opened in Weimar. Frankfurt, Munich, and other German cities followed suit. These rooms had an extraordinary design. Ropes were tied to the fingers and toes of the corpses. These ropes passed through the ceiling and were connected to a bell system. If the corpse moved, the bell would ring, and there was always an attendant in the room, someone waiting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for a bell to ring. Did these bells ever ring? The sources are contradictory. Some historians say that survivors were removed from these rooms. Others say such events never occurred and that most are urban legends. But what we do know is this system was used for decades. And the sole reason it was used was that the people of the era genuinely believed in this fear. This fear was so widespread that German composer Friedrich Chopin left a testament before he died. Do not bury my body immediately. Make certain my heart has stopped. Frédéric Chopin left a similar directive. Alfred Nobel, the inventor of dynamite, harbored the same concern. Author Hans Christian Andersen would write the following in his notebook before every journey. Appears to be in a deep sleep. I am not dead. This note was intended for potential rescuers. But perhaps the most tragic figure in this history is the British surgeon and anatomist William Tebb. Tebb wrote the most comprehensive work compiling the phenomenon of premature burial toward the end of the 19th century. Premature burial and how it may be prevented. In this work, Tebb brought together hundreds of documented cases from England, America, and Europe, not merely suspicious cases but confirmed ones. Cases in which the grave was reopened and a living person was found inside, or in which definitive evidence such as claw marks and changes in body position was identified. Tebb's work influenced one of the era's most important medical and social reformers, American journalist and writer Edgar Allan Poe. Yes, that Poe, the one known for his story, The Premature Burial. Before writing this story, Poe conducted extensive research. He drew inspiration from real cases, and that inspiration was not merely fiction, it was a reflection of the reality of the era. In Poe's 1844 story, The Premature Burial, the narrator is a man tormented by the fear of being buried alive. He has bell mechanisms installed beside his bed, places a lantern and food inside his coffin, and has a ventilation system built into his grave. Do these details seem irrational? No, because all of them were actually being done. The majority of the population in Europe and America genuinely took such precautions. And what made them seem paranoid was the existence of real cases on the matter. When you look at patent records from that era, a chilling picture emerges. In the second half of the 19th century, dozens of different patents were filed for safety coffins in America and Europe. Most of these coffins had internally openable lid mechanisms. Some included ventilation tubes. Some had a bell cord that could be pulled from the inside. Some even had signal flares that could be ignited from within. These inventions might seem very strange to you, but the people who created them were individuals who had lost family members, who lived in constant fear, and who had perhaps confronted evidence that a loved one had been buried alive. In 1868, an American inventor named Franz Vester received what is perhaps history's most famous safety coffin patent. The design was as follows: a pipe extending upward from the coffin lid, a cord running through this pipe, one end of the cord in the hand of the person inside, the other end connected to a bell inside a small structure standing atop the grave. If the person inside woke up, they would pull the cord. The bell would ring. and the structure above had a glass window so that the attendant could see inside and confirm the movement of the corpse. The pipe also served as a ventilation system. Vestor's patent attracted great attention. Newspapers carried the story in their headlines. The public received the design with a mixture of fear and fascination. Were these systems actually used by anyone? This is where history becomes somewhat murky. What is definitively known is this: these coffins attracted the interest of many people and orders were placed. But the number of examples actually installed underground is debatable. Historical records suggest that the practice remained largely theoretical. The logistics were extremely difficult, keeping someone to continuously monitor a grave, checking the bell every day. This required significant organization and funding. Consequently, these systems were largely a luxury of the wealthy. And here, once again, history's dark inequality reveals itself. The wealthy could purchase safety coffins. The wealthy could access waiting mortuaries. The wealthy could leave special directives in their wills. And the poor, they were buried however circumstances dictated, hastily, sometimes without anyone verifying whether they had truly died. Especially during outbreaks of plague, cholera, and typhus, mass graves were dug in poor neighborhoods. And within those mass graves, evidence later identified by historians shows that, on occasion, living people were among those buried. Now let us pause for a moment and connect this history to the present. Because the fear of being buried alive is not a forgotten phenomenon left to the dim pages of history. This fear directly shaped the development of modern medicine. The long shadow of this history lies at the very foundation of the brain death criteria used in hospitals today. The precise death certificate procedures required before organs can be donated today are a direct legacy of this history. And the debates surrounding patients today in what is called persistent vegetative state actually prompt us to ask a very ancient question all over again. How do we define death? This question rose from the dark graves of the Middle Ages and continues to this day to be one of the most contested topics in medical ethics. Now let us look at one of the least known yet most important figures of that era, Bavarian Duke Ludwig I, who in 1828 enacted comprehensive legislation in his country aimed at preventing premature burial. This law established specific criteria for determining death and required a minimum waiting period of 48 hours before a person could be buried. This was a revolutionary step for Europe of the time, because death was no longer solely a matter to be decided by a family or a clergyman. The state had intervened. Following Bavaria, other German states, then Austria, then France introduced similar regulations. These laws were the first drafts of the modern medical death certificate system. But perhaps the most humane dimension of this history lies in the rituals that ordinary people developed in response to this fear. Today we understand mourning rituals superficially. Black clothing, a funeral ceremony, a cemetery visit. But when you trace these rituals to their origins, you find that most of them served a practical purpose. Take, for instance, the tradition of sitting with the deceased, which was common among European Christians. When a person passed away, the family would take turns keeping vigil beside the body, usually for 3 days. These 3 days carried religious significance as a reference to Christ's 3 days of death and resurrection. But they also provided an opportunity during those 3 days to verify whether the corpse was truly dead. In some cultures, this period was 7 days, in others even longer. The tradition of wailing also had this dimension, crying loudly, moaning, moving about, sometimes shouting beside the corpse. If the person was waking up, let them wake up. This was a practical survival check concealed behind a religious function. Similarly, the rituals of closing the eyes of the deceased and binding the jaw, common in certain cultures, can be read in a different light. The eyes were closed and coins were placed upon them. This was a tradition with various mythological explanations. But at the same time, after the eyes were closed, someone would touch the deceased, and in that touch, Vital signs such as trembling or shuddering could be detected. Binding the jaw likewise provided periodic opportunities to check whether someone appearing dead had moved. Now let us come to perhaps the most chilling scientific dimension of this history. How many people were actually buried alive? It is impossible to answer this question with certainty, because by its very nature, most people buried alive could not report it. Even if there were survivors, they were not recorded or the records were lost. But the clues we do have suggest that this number was far higher than commonly believed. In his late 19th century compilation, William Tebb included 219 confirmed cases, from England and America alone. From documented cases alone. How many more cases were there in Germany, France, Italy, and Russia? And all of these cases occurred during an era when freedom of the press was extremely limited, transportation was very slow, and many deaths were never officially recorded. Historian Jan Bonson, in his 2001 work Buried Alive, The Terrifying History of Our Most Primal Fear, addressed this subject comprehensively. Bonson argued that the vast majority of cases reflected postmortem bodily changes rather than actual premature burial. But he also acknowledged that there were genuine cases that could not be dismissed in any way. It is precisely this contradiction that makes this corner of history both fascinating and disturbing. We cannot know the truth with certainty, and this uncertainty only amplifies the power of the fear. What about today? Is premature burial possible today? Brain death criteria in modern medicine have advanced considerably. With EKG, and brain imaging technologies, confirming actual death is much easier. But some cases still retain their ambiguity. The boundary between minimally conscious state and vegetative state is still debated in the medical world. So the problem has not been entirely resolved. It has merely changed form. And here I have a question for you. What does death mean to you? Does the thought that we will one day die disturb you? Or do you prefer not to think about it? The reason I ask is this: the phobia of being buried alive stems from our not knowing what death is like. And that fear, today just as thousands of years ago, is the same. Only the tools at our disposal have changed. Now let us come to perhaps the most personal and most emotional dimension of this history. Today you have lost a loved one. You are going to the funeral. You see the coffin. And that question comes to your mind, leaving you filled with doubt. What if there is still someone alive inside? This voice is the voice of the poor people of the Middle Ages. The voice of people who lived centuries ago, who loved just as we love, who experienced loss just as we have. That voice still lives in the collective unconscious. And when I tell this history, we understand just a little better where that voice comes from. These dark events from history also teach us this: humanity's struggle against the fear of death will never end. Bell mechanisms were invented. Waiting mortuaries were built. Laws were passed. Books were written. Stories were told. And alongside all of this, people struggled to escape doubt, to protect those they loved, to face the unknown. That struggle sometimes took the form of a safety coffin patent. Sometimes a letter, sometimes a last will, sometimes a poem, and today we carry this legacy. In the slow tempo of every funeral, in the careful vigil of every morning ritual, in every last check performed just to be sure, the trace of this history is there. As we approach the end of our story, I want to share with you one final case from contemporary history. The event took place in Italy in 2001. A man died in a hospital. His paperwork was completed and his family was notified. The man was placed in a morgue drawer. A few hours later, a morgue attendant heard knocking on the drawer. When they found the man, he was frozen and on the verge of death, but still breathing. He was rescued. It is very likely that he is alive today. This was the year 2001, the golden age of modern medicine. An era of EKGs, monitors, and dozens of diagnostic devices. And still, this happened. The nightmare of the Middle Ages came knocking once again in the 21st century. As I tell this story, mixed emotions stir within me. On one hand, there is fear. On the other, curiosity. But above all, there is a kind of empathy. For the people trapped in dark coffins. For the hands that left those terrifying claw marks. For the attendants waiting for a bell to ring. For the doctors who said, "I want to be certain." For all of them. Because the fear they experienced was no different from our own. The fear of the unknown, of losing control, of disappearing into nothingness. This is our shared human condition. And when we remember this shared condition, those dark pages of history become not only terrifying, but also profoundly human. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Don't forget to like and share in the comments which dark events from history interest you most.